You're listening to Brainwork Framework, a business and marketing podcast, brought to you by focus-biz.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode. Imagine if you could take all of your life's accomplishments. I mean, everything from your entire lifespan. Now multiply that 10 times, and you may have accomplished only half of what Joseph Burke has accomplished himself. With me today, a very talented man from design to music, artwork, everything in between. This guy does it all. Joseph, thanks so much for joining me today.
What's up, man? How you
How
doing?
you doing? Great to see you, man.
I think there's a term for everything you just mentioned.
What is that?
A nerd.
A nerd. Yes.
There you go. Yeah. I'm a
Talk-
big nerd, bro.
Joseph, talk nerdy to me, man. Tell me about your
Oh,
life
dude.
story, what you're doing.
Talk nerdy to you. Well, I currently have a converter device that is transferring FFpeg audio on an analog 4:3 ratio. Is that, no, I'm sorry. I'm getting way over myself.
I've heard of a couple of those words.
No, man, I'm from Southeast Kentucky, originally born and raised in a little town called Whitesburg, Kentucky, Fleming Neon, Kentucky. And that was kind of like my hometown, and population like 3,000. It's really small.
Yeah.
And I kind of grew up in a way that was more, I didn't have no siblings, so I was an only child. And so I had more freedom to be able to explore and just kind of figure out things along the way as I went. And part of that is I figured out, oh, I like music. I like art. I like anything that is in the creative realm. I pretty much explored as a child.
Yeah.
And a lot of that stemmed from my many hospital stays when I was a child, because I grew up a very sick kid. So much to the fact that my mom and dad didn't expect me to live past age 16.
Wow.
And so it became, I didn't know this. I didn't know I was sick. I had no idea. I had no inclination. My parents didn't tell me a thing. They wanted me to live my best life without this cloud over my head at all times. Like, oh, you're the sick kid that's going to die. And instead, they chose to withhold that information from me. And I think it was a really great choice on their end, just a parenting, thing. And so,
Gotta be tough. How do you hold that in? But you
Well-
feel like it's in the best interest of your child.
well, there's a reason why. There's a reason, method to their madness. In the 80s, when I grew up, I was born in 79, and somewhere around 82, 83, I was born with hemophilia, which is a blood bleeding disorder. It's a clotting disorder. Basically, long story short on hemophilia, basically what that means is when you have hemophilia, you have 12 protein factors in your body that combine to form a clot. So when you cut, these 12 factors come together, but there is a glue that binds all of those factors together, and that glue is actually called factor 8. Factor 8 is just, without factor 8, all your proteins kind of scatter, right?
Okay.
So you need to have this glue. I don't have the glue. And so long story short, to be able to remedy that, I have to do these infusions, basically different treatment regimens at different periods of my life. But I was going anywhere between 3 and 4 IV intravenous infusions a week, which is directly into the vein to replace the factor 8 that my body wasn't producing. And this is the fault of the liver, because the liver is not producing those clotting proteins. So anyway, I'm building up the story here. And so because I couldn't clot, and because I relied on these medications were produced from human blood donors. And those human blood donors back in the 80s, the FDA did not regulate the source pools of where this blood was coming from. The blood was coming from federal prisons, Skid Row locations. Homeless people would go in, donate blood, get $25, go buy meth and do whatever, and then come back and repeat, because they would get a constant $25. And so anyway, long story short, a lot of the hemophilia batches of medicine was contaminated with HIV and hepatitis C. And so around 82, 83, best we can determine, that's kind of when I became HIV positive. We don't have an exact date. We do know the exact lot number of the medications. We know that. But it's interesting when you look at it in retrospect, because now here it is 2023, and I'm going to be 42 years HIV positive, 41, 41, 41, 41 years HIV positive, which is incredible. It's insane. So the reason I tell you all of this, long story, big buildup, I know. But the reason my mom and dad didn't tell me is because in the 80s, there was AIDS hysteria. When small towns found out about this, there were several individuals. If you do your research, there's two that come to mind. One is Ricky Ray. The other one is Ryan White. Ricky Ray, his family's house was burned down because all himself, Ricky Ray, and his Robert and Randy, his two other brothers, all contracted the AIDS virus.
Mm-hmm.
And the community did not want that. And they would throw rocks in their windows and bust their windows with hate notes on it. Ultimately, ended up in their house being burned down by arson. And then Ryan White on the other side, so Ricky Ray was from Arcadia, Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan White was from Kokomo, Indiana. And Ryan White's story was he was banned from school and he became an overnight sensation. You know, he became an advocate for the AIDS virus, but also too, a lot of media was thrust into his family and literally just waiting outside their house for them to leave and go and come and do their daily things.
Wow.
And so Ryan White he was on the Phil Donahue show. He was on Oprah. You can Google all of this and it's all on YouTube. But my mom and dad didn't want me to be part of that because we came from a very small town. Everybody knew everybody's business. It was kind of one of those situations where if it would have gotten out, I could have easily been a Ricky Ray or a Ryan White.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom and dad just like, you know what, let's just let him live his life without all of this cloud of crazy that's going to come with this storm of just this pandemonium. And so, that was pretty much the first 5 years of my life.
Wow, what a crazy story. How do you as a person, how do your parents deal with that? I feel like that was probably hindsight the best thing to do because unfortunately with the misconception with HIV and AIDS that it became like a modern day witch hunt almost where they were going off of no real factual information. They just said, you're different and I don't like you.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is crazy. And just the knowing that doctors projected me to live up to 16. I'm going to be 44 this November.
Wow.
So, wow. Yeah.
How did that change your outlook on life and perception? When did you actually find out that you had this and what your diagnosis or prognosis was?
It's interesting you say that. So my mom and dad, when you become the age of 18, my mom and dad figured it was time. And there was, I've shared this story on other outlets and platforms. And the biggest question that arises is, well, what if you were sexually active during those times and you could have gotten somebody infected? Well, that could be a possibility. But the thing is, I was a sick kid and I lived most of my days in a hospital room.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't have time to date and explore that. And I didn't really even know what dating was until I entered college because I was just, to an extent, I was a sheltered kid, but at the same time, that really wasn't a motive for me to kind of follow and pursue. So anybody that's asking that question right up front, to put your mind at ease, I did not. And that was the reason why my parents made the decision that they made, because they knew that the life I was going to lead.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that for my safety. But I found out a month after I graduated high school, literally 2 months away from starting as a freshman in college. And you get this ball dropped on you. And who I thought was my hematologist, because I didn't know what doctor was what. I didn't know what medications I was taking, because you go back to 1994, 98, 90, 97, somewhere in that neck of the woods, you didn't have Google. You didn't have the internet where you can just go and type in a medication name and see what it is. That was unavailable at the time, especially in rural Kentucky where I grew up. And so I didn't know why I was taking these pills. I didn't know. I just knew that I needed to take them. And so my mom and dad, on a routine doctor's visit in 1998, which would have been around June 1998, who I thought was my hematologist turned out to be my infectious disease doctor.
Wow.
He walked into the room and he's like, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Burke, can you please excuse yourself? I need to talk to your son. And the doctor looked at me, and the first question that came out of his mouth was like, what is the worst virus you can think of? Okay, that's a really good conversation starter. I'm like,
Yeah.
not knowing my situation or my diagnosis, I said blindly, well, the flu. And he looked, he's like, think a little more severe. What have you been seeing in the media? And I said, AIDS. And he said, you have the virus that causes AIDS, yes. But there's another thing on top of that we have to monitor. You also have hepatitis C. And we call that co-infection, where you have two viruses in your body competing for your immune system. And I'm like, oh. And this was at age 18, mind you, 2 years after my projected death date.
Mm-hmm.
And so I entered college, man. These next couple of years were very dark for me.
Mm-hmm.
I did a lot of like soul searching. That's where the Blue Man Group came in, by the way.
Oh, okay.
So during these years of just trying to figure out who I was and who I thought I was versus who I am now. So once I knew this knowledge, anyone that I dated beyond that, I was 1,000% transparent with. They knew what they were up against. And so for all those incredible, strong women that took me on before I got married, you guys are amazing. And thank you for being building blocks to my life. If you watch this interview and allowing me to be transparent. But that's how it all started, pretty much. That's how I found out. It was a routine doctor's visit that went rogue. And I was like, okay, so what is my life expectancy? And he's like, well, if you take your meds, your virus will be suppressed, but we got to monitor your liver.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was this whole thing, I didn't really know. And yeah, it was intense. It was intense. Like I would say from 1999 to around 2002, I just didn't know who I was. I was kind of a shell of a human, a shell of a man. And I always, because of my hemophilia and my permanent joint damage that I have to my elbows and my knees, just give you an idea, I can only bend my elbow. This is me bending my elbow as far out as I can.
Wow.
That's me bending my elbow in as far as it'll go. So I have maybe 15, 20 degrees range of motion there. That's all I got. That's all I got, if that, on my right elbow. So that's what hemophilia does. And this is muscle atrophy, wasting right here. Because you can't extend that joint, the muscle just wastes away.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
And yet still probably one of the best design artists and Call of Duty players I've ever seen.
Whatever. Get out of here. Get out of here.
Didn't mean to detract from
You
that.
can take my elbows, but you can't take my fingers. Fingers, man.
So now take me back. So throughout college, the 99 through 2002, where you were really discovering and finding yourself. Who are you? What are you doing? When did you finally start to see the light? When did things start looking up for you? Did things get better?
Yeah, things got progressively better. I think, you surround yourself with positive people who are creative and are like-minded. You yourself are going to take on that mindset. And so I began working for a grassroots organization back home in Eastern Kentucky, proudly represent. It's called Apple Shop, and it's not apples. It's APPALSHOP. Apple Shop is short for Appalachian Film Workshop. And so right out of college, I had a degree, and I was learning how to splice together video, movies, and document. And the Apple Shop in the first floor of the building in Whitesburg, Kentucky, also had a FM radio station. And so I became a licensed FCC jock. I did a rock show for about 7.5 years on WMMT 88.7 Mountain Community Radio. And I did that for a long time and kind of found my voice that nobody needs to know type thing. This is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. And so long story short, in that interim, on a fateful night in December of 1999, it was probably had 7-8 inches of snow on the ground, still coming down outside, a wintry evening in Kentucky. And it was about 11:30 at night, maybe midnight. And I was watching the Tonight Show with Jay Leno back in the day. And he said, coming up next, Blue Man Group. You don't want to miss it. And I was like, what the heck is Blue Man Group? So I stayed awake for another 10, 15 minutes to watch the performance. Ended up not going to sleep until about 4 a.m. that night because I watched that tape. I watched it over and over and over and over again because I recorded it on VHS. And I was like, what is, I mean, the music got me before the comedy part of the show got me.
Mm-hmm.
And this tribal percussion that just echoes the beating heart of a man is like this melodic sound. And I was like, what is this? And that opened up the door for me. And through that, I was like, you know what? I found an online community. A family I didn't even know existed through the Blue Man Group community. And they had a message board back in the day. You remember message boards when you knew topic and you do all that? Well, I was a part of that. And a couple months after I watched that Leno clip, I joined the message board and became friends with an online community the following year for the first time in my life. So anyway, I was sitting there and there's an online community that's attached to this. And for the first time in my life, I got on a plane and like around, I think it was 2001, which is a year after 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
And I got on a plane. See, 9/11 was 2000, right? Yeah.
2001.
2001.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, yeah, right after that, a few months literally right after 9/11, hopping on a plane going to Chicago to meet people I had never met in my life through an online community. And it became so immersive for me. And it was just one of those awesome experiences where I understood the power of the internet, the power of online community. And this became my tribe. And I wanted to do something to Blue Man Group that they gave me, which was a sense of longing, a sense of community. So I made bluemanfans.com. And long before the time when there was YouTube, where you can go and click a video and stream and watch it,
mm-hmm.
I would garner submissions from fans who had their own VHS copies of Blue Man Group videos and send them to me, and I would convert them. And through bluemanfans.com, through a free account, no paid subscriptions or anything, you could go on. Well, we had a library of stuff that was categorized by television, outdoor performances, all kinds of crazy Intel Pentium commercials. You could click on your categories and you could go in and actually live stream video straight from my website.
Wow.
Long before there was YouTube. And it was part of my programming that I did back in the day. And so and it was really interesting because I got a call from Blue Man Group's lawyer in 2003.
Uh-oh.
I remember his name. His name was Don Zaretsky. He's this Jewish guy. He's like, hey, Mr. Burke, I'm Don Zaretsky with Blue Man Productions, representing Blue Man Productions. And I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? And he's like, no. He said, you're actually garnering more traffic than our official blueman.com website. And we would like to partner with you.
Wow.
And I'm like, whoa. Okay. So that was a foot in the door. Fast forward a few years later in 2008, 2010, I became what is officially known in the company and working for Blue Man Productions as a Blue Man Group insider, an insider. And so I would go backstage on their tour, which they had a tour at the time that went all around North America. It was in Denver, Dallas, Pittsburgh, you name it, we were everywhere. And I got to tour with the Blue Men, go to the cities, interview them backstage, out of makeup, and be kind of a fan liaison. Like fans would ask me questions to ask to them.
Yeah.
And it was this kind of cool little thing that we did. And through that, I met my future wife.
Wow. That's incredible. How old were you when the lawyer first reached out to you about the website?
That would have been 2003. So I was 18 when I graduated in 1998. So I would maybe been 23, 22.
Wow. What a crazy, scary experience to have this musical performance group, their lawyer, reach out and feel my first thought, I'm in trouble. I'm about to go to jail.
I thought I was screwed, dude. I was like, I was expecting like a cease and desist order
Yes.
emailed to me, like, remove all video content from your website. But no, he had just wonderful things to say. He said, we in the company, we see your effort, we see what you're doing, we praise your work, and we as Blue Man Group can't endorse your website because of the content you have, which has multiple copyright fractions, but we can endorse you. And I'm like, oh, Okay.
Wow. Look
And
at
so
them
the
building
reason
bridges instead of
Yeah,
fences.
I know, and that's a grassroots company that Blue Man Group is. They
Hmm.
take they that's they're so good at what they do. And it was through that experience that I got to go to New York and meet the founders of Blue Man Group and have this official meet and greet type thing, and it just blew me away. And he's like, "Yeah, we're going to have you on board as an insider. Does that sound cool with you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, that sounds really cool." And so it was really wild. It was one of the wildest. I would have at the time I was living in an apartment complex over near Epcot at Walt Disney World. Right behind Epcot's an apartment complex, and I would have a limo pull up at 4 a.m. for a 7 a.m. flight. And everybody's like, why is there a limo pulling into an apartment complex? But it was car service. I didn't have to pay or ride for anything. It was insane. One of the greatest moments of my life was working for Blue Man Group officially.
Wow. What a cool experience. But you created something so valuable. And it was in part because you were searching for something as well. And you were
Yeah.
doing it just for that sense of belonging. You wanted to be a part of something bigger. And you said, I'm going to dedicate my time and my skill set to make this tribute, this homage to the Blue Man Group. And little did you know, it got noticed pretty quickly. And
Didn't expect it either.
it became something even more. You're like, oh, hey, you want to tour with us? You want to be this insider? Like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
So, what
And
are go ahead.
mind you too, the founders of Blue Man Group, Chris, Matt, and Phil, they knew my story. Actually, some of the employees at Blue Man Group, specifically several Blue Men I know in Chicago, the founders, they were one of the first people I opened up to about my story because at this time I still kept my story secret in my hometown.
Mhm.
And to this day, there's still people that don't know my hometown.
Wow.
Just because, they don't think to search for the right terms. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, right.
You know, they don't
Yeah,
think to,
but that was your journey to start the Blue Man Group. And then, so Joseph, you do music, you do creative work. So I guess you're a freelancer in a sense because you can help businesses in so many different ways. What are you doing now?
I lance
To
for free.
You lance for free. Man, that's
Yeah,
great.
I got started in art at a very early age. I was reading comic books as a kid. So
Mhm.
when I was those long hospital stays I talked about earlier, I my mom and dad would bring me comic books and I would get deep dived into the world of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, Todd McFarlane, Jim Lee, all these amazing talented visual artists who in the 90s and the late 80s just kind of blew my mind and I was like, how are they doing this?
Yeah.
And I wanted to be able to mimic what they're doing. I wanted to be able to draw and I wanted to be able to make my own comic book. And fueled by that, my mom would buy me these sketch pads and bring them to me and I'd be in the hospital, one IV in one arm and me drawing with the other, literally. And just learning how to draw myself and trying to mostly self-taught, I would say.
Mhm.
And so from that, it kind of, my mom saw that there was interest and there was believe it or not, in one of my about 15 minutes from where I lived, there was a Catholic priest who was an artist and would do night classes every Wednesday night. And you would pay like $10 as a donation to the church.
Mm.
And then you would come in and there was a class of like 15 of us. And he would go over like geometric shapes, perspective, shading, all the fundamentals, anatomy, spheres, how to draw things in a perspective point of view.
Mhm.
And that was where I really learned a lot of fundamentals, like specifically on how to draw and how to illustrate. And my mom saw that talent in me, and then she was the one that encouraged me to do that. So for the next 8 months to a year, I would be in Father Randall's class at 6 o'clock on Wednesday nights, learning how to draw. For me, it was an awesome experience, and just being able to learn how to draw the proper way, how to
Mhm.
draw from a professional standpoint. And I used that as a catalyst to going into college because when I graduated college, I got a degree in the arts. And right out of college, I began in my hometown in Kentucky, there was nobody that was a web designer or webmaster.
Mhm.
And I took programming. And so I knew HTML, MySQL, and all that stuff. And I was the only one that knew how to program a website. And so a lot of those hometown places that wanted to have an online presence would contact me. And that's how I began to build up a repertoire of clients. And it was for everything from logo design to full on building out websites. I did it all. And that was pretty much what fueled me, and a lot of trips to Chicago. That's how I got money to do those sort of things. And it was really fun because in the midst of all of that, I understood that I had this love and passion for taking something that is a white canvas and converting it into something at the end of this is a finished piece that not only I can be proud of, but the client can be proud of. And so coming up with a logo, coming up with a design was always at the forefront of my mind. Fast forward to today. Today I live stream on Twitch and I show the whole process from beginning to end, and very transparent. I love to talk about my process and why I do things the way I do them. And I just launched a web store actually with a lot of my retro art and designs. And if you go to josephburkearts.com, you can definitely go through and see some of the art that I've done in the years past, and some of the art that I've just added recently from my Twitch stream. But it wasn't until probably 2 or 3 years ago that probably longer than that, I would go back to 2016 and started understanding that one of my passions is to be able to create retro art, now called synthwave art, which is you're using those vibrant pinks, fuchsias, turquoises, teals. You're using those vibrant colors of retro palettes and creating art from those. And so that became kind of my focus. Is like, okay, I can do this. I can create chromatic art, which is letters that look like chrome, like you can reach out and it's metallic, you can touch it. And the WWF logo, you think about all those old 80s logos back in the day that just popped. And think of the Batman logo, Batman 1989. A lot of people don't realize that entire bat symbol was nothing but an airbrush stencil.
Really?
Created by a French artist, yeah.
Wow.
So I was like, how do they do this? How do they take a simple airbrush that they're just and create something that looks like you can reach out and touch it? You think of the Trapper Keeper. Did you own a Trapper Keeper?
I did, yeah.
Okay. So you think of you remember the crazy art that was like 3D looking triangles and spheres, and it's like, I want to know how to do that. I want to create art that looks like a Trapper Keeper design.
Yeah.
So that's where it came from.
What a crazy inspiration to see a Trapper Keeper and say, I want to make things like that. But they were super cool. I mean,
they were neat. Yeah.
The depth and the shapes. I mean, you're like, how do you create that perspective within art? I mean, it's incredible. Yeah. And I just checked out the josephburkearts.com, and these designs are super cool. I'm loving the t-shirts. This penguin one, that's speaking to me, and the wall art. That is just incredible.
There's some categories there. I've got everything from drinkware to shirts to whatever. But yeah, I'm still working on it. It's a work in progress. It's not perfected yet, but it's getting there.
Doesn't that apply to anything in life? Always improving, trying to learn more. I'm still working on this, trying to improve that.
Yeah. It's never a process where I'm in the mindset of like, oh, I'm done with this.
You're right.
I don't need to learn any more. It's nothing like that, because I think as a true creative and an artist, you're constantly pushing yourself to learn more about the craft that you do. Whether it's music side of what I do, whether it's the art side of what I do, or the photography side of what I do. And I learned all these traits, by the way, when I was a sick kid growing up, because I wanted to dabble into all these realms of, my mom and dad were traveling gospel musicians. And so right out the gate, 6 months out of the womb, I'm hearing music. I'm hearing the sound of song in the house. And I'm hearing my dad play the piano and the guitar. And that's how I learned how to play the piano, was my dad taught me. And it was just, I can understand the complexities of everything that I've done, whether it was from being a radio disc jockey to being a Blue Man Group insider to being a retro graphic designer artist or composing my own music. I don't know. I mean, it's just, there's many facets to what I do, but at the same time, it's all centered around one persona, is to keep pursuing and keep chasing a goal and a dream to be better than you were before. And,
No, that's great. I've also listened to your music. I put that on in the background when I work it. Man, that music slaps. It is just like the perfect chill vibes. You said you have a synthesizer. I was like, how did you make those sounds? Like, that sounds incredible. And it's like the music has a depth to it and it sounds incredible.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do all my mixing, all of my own mastering and editing and just song composition. And here's the crazy thing, a lot of my songs, many people don't know this, a lot of my songs come from an improvisation point of view,
No.
where I am either going through an emotion, I'm going through depression, and there's ups and downs. I'm not going to be honest with you. Not every day is sunshine and rainbows.
Mhm.
I suffer with chronic pain. The one thing I do suffer from today is stemming from the hemophilia joint deformities that I have,
Mhm.
and that is chronic pain. And there's good days and bad days, but coming from that vein of pain, that's tweetable right there.
New band name, I
Coming
call it.
vein of pain, coming.
Coming this summer, the pain of pain.
No, really,
This is what I love. This is
can't
great.
make this up. You can't make this.
I was hoping for a little bit of this because,
Yeah,
man,
okay.
just
Well,
the voices and characters that you create. I probably should have thrown in comedian in there as well, or voice actor.
oh man, I don't know. But coming from that just stemmed this whole world of creativity for me. And when I'm hurting, and there's days where it's good, there's days when it's bad, I will sit down and melodically play something on the piano that kind of soothes my soul in a way.
Yeah.
And from those moments when I'm sitting down, it's from an improvised state of mind, because a lot of it's improvisation.
Mhm.
And I'm sitting there just playing, and then this melody comes out, and then I'm like, oh, let me hit the record button on this, and I'll play the piano melody. And then I'll go back and add the drums, the bass, the symphonics, and all of the special effects and things like that. But yeah, a lot of that stems from the emotional states that I've been through. So if a song sounds kind of heavy and hits kind of heavy, it probably was a heavy moment in my life, pretty much.
Music is such a fascinating way of kind of
It is.
communicating.
Yeah,
It
it
is.
is.
It
It's
really invokes emotion.
and for me, it's a nonverbal way of communicating. I'd say 90% of my songs don't really have lyrics or words,
Mhm.
unless it's me speaking in the background, like doing something like, some kind of overdubbed voice. And so I think it speaks to my heart. It heals my heart. And I guess that's the hope and ambition
Mhm.
of my music, that people that listen to it that are hurting themselves, it can kind of touch a little bit there.
It does,
It
absolutely.
it can kinda hit a note in somebody's heart that's, like, maybe depressed or something like that, and
Absolutely, absolutely.
because there's emotional states. There's good days and bad days, I'll be honest, and
Mhm.
it's not all sunshine and rainbows, even though I live in the Florida state, and we have a lot of rainbows and sunshine.
But not every day.
Not every day.
But I'm a big fan of instrumental music. When you can make the instruments carry what would normally be the vocal melody, it just carries you through the emotions. You
Yeah,
can feel it, and you
yeah,
don't need lyrics to convey that message. It's incredible.
yeah, and it's, I guess, a knack. I don't know what you call it, but it's just one of those outlets, one of the many outlets that I use
Hmm.
to be able to cope with everything that I go through on a daily basis.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just going to ask if do you think your current health state, or the things you had to deal with health wise throughout your life, did that change your perception on trying to live every day to its fullest, in a sense where you said, today I really want to learn X, Y, or Z, or I really want to perfect this or practice that?
I think there's an underlying voice in there that you just said, that I think is a drive that drives me to constantly evolve and learn.
Hmm.
And I do think that stems from that early onset. And I'm thinking my words out as I'm processing it, but it stems from that not knowing which day is going to be the day, or not knowing which day is going to be the day that I wake up and I'm completely yellow from jaundice because my liver is failing. Or, is this the onset of the beginning of the end for me? Is this it? Is this what's going to take me out?
Yeah.
And it's something that I don't dwell on personally. I don't sit there and dwell on my own morbidity or mortality.
Hmm.
I want to seize the day, carpe diem.
Hmm.
You think, great movie, by the way, but that saying is really true in all the elements of my life. Is carpe diem. I want to seize the day. I want to make every day mean something, maybe not only to me, but mean something to somebody around me, whether it's my wife or people that I'm in communication with.
Mhm.
You know, put out your best light, and you get good light back. You know.
I love that. Great attitude to have. And it's
Thank
important
you.
to maintain that positive outlook. I hope at least for those who might be listening that it kind of changes your perception too. That man, maybe I'm not carpe dieming enough, living my life to the fullest. Maybe I need to seize the day a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to do something that impacts, my life and the lives of others. And I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, none of us are promised a tomorrow. I mean, you just turn on the nightly news and or whatever community you're living in, and you'll see immediately that not everybody's promised a tomorrow. And you're given 24 hours every day. What are you going to do with those 24 hours that's going to leave an impact in somebody's life? That's a challenge.
Makes you think.
Because it makes you think, but it also, too, it makes you put things in perspective, because if you're wallowing in your own misery every day, oh, woe is me. Oh, this is bad. Oh, my God. I don't want to get out today. I'm going to stay in the house. I'm going to do this. I don't want to read. I don't want to draw. I don't want to do any of this. What are you doing? You're just wasting oxygen at that point. Just get off your butt and do something. And I see a lot of that today. I'm an old school guy. I grew up in the 80s and born in the 70s. And, I see today's generation, man, they are just, wow. I just sit back and like, man, there is just no drive in you at all, is there? They're just, and it's just sad, and I'm sitting here looking at this and, I don't know. It's an interesting perspective on the generation gaps between yesterday and today.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, it bothers me that our youth are not willing to explore those sides of themselves that are truly creative. Whether we are creative we create something. We just got to figure out what that is. And that's the part of the journey. That's the part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Absolutely. And even with things that you're passionate about or want to learn, you're probably going to suck for a little bit. Things are going to be bad until you get better. You have to apply yourself. You have to be dedicated.
Yeah, you go back and listen to some of my, which I've never released, but there's some songs that I've composed, and I'm like, oof, boy, that was pretty rough. But then you gotta go through that phase to get to the next phase. And
you just have to start.
You
just need to start.
Yeah. Just no excuses. What's your excuse today?
Mm-hmm.
And if you got one, then you're probably not in the mindset. It's true.
It's true. It really is.
Yeah. So
Joseph, tell me where listeners can connect with you, can find you, can learn more about you.
Yeah. So I'm all over the web. It's the easiest username on the web to find. This is my name, Joseph Burke, JosepHBurke, Arts, ARTS. I am literally that username on Twitch, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. Every outlet you can think of, josephburkearts.com, josephburke.com. Yeah. So it's not very hard. And once you have the username, you just plug it into your favorite social media app, TikTok, Snapchat. I'm there. I'm on all of them. So.
Oh, that's so cool. And everyone needs to go check out his live Twitch streams. It is really cool to see the art being created in real time. Man. And the fact that you take the time to be willing to share that information, like, let me take you through the process. Let me take you through my workday on the creative process. That's super cool to witness.
Yeah, it's one of the things, too. I want people to learn. I don't want to be just a bobblehead sitting there like, let's add a little circle here, maybe a little fade gradient there.
Happy little trees over here.
Yeah, some happy little trees and little squirrels. Want some squirrels? Some squirrelies in there. It's all pretty for you.
I love it. So, Joseph, one last piece of, content here. Just wanted to ask, is there any piece of advice, anything that you'd like to share for anyone listening? What would you like to tell them?
Ooh, don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs. Unless their doctor prescribed it, they save your life.
No, I would say don't. Yeah, I got a lot to say, but I'm going to condense it down into less than 60. Fear is the biggest antagonist that will keep you from doing something. It will grip you there longer than you want to stay and keep you from following your dreams. when you overcome your fear, you're overcoming parts of yourself, and you're overcoming what you think others would think about you. And the only way to do that is to simply do what your heart is telling you to do and follow your dreams, follow your bliss. And for me, essentially, fear can be crippling. It can hold you into a place to where you feel isolated on an island all by yourself. And you're just allowing empty space in your brain to be rented up like a billboard. You need to figure out a way to overcome the fears that you have to follow your dream and chase your dream. If that's creating art, cool. If that's changing up to a profession, cool. But don't allow fear to be a conduit to grip you there and hold you there.
I love it. That's fantastic, Joe.
That's
Thank
all
you.
I got to say about that, Jim.
That's just wonderful. I like it.
That's it right there. I just tell you. Good. All right.
So everybody, if you want to check out Joseph Burke, make sure you go to josephburkearts.com, find him on Twitch, on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn, and go check out all the cool things that he's doing. Joe, thanks so much for joining me. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too, pal.
Thanks.
Boy.
Oh boy. Thanks everyone.